there, it's Sarah at Jackson Regenerational Farm here. I am doing my first video in the sourdough series, and today we're going to talk briefly around the mindset of sourdough, a little bit about the health benefits, and then we're going to dive into feeding your sourdough, and recipes are going to follow. So first, the mindset around sourdough. It may seem like it's a lot of work, and maybe you've tried it in the past, or maybe you know somebody who's done it and said, oh my gosh, that's so much work. You gotta feed it every day, or you gotta feed it all the time, or whatever. And I'm just here to tell you that none of that is true. There is, if you think that it's going to be difficult, of course it's going to be difficult. And if you think that you want to do it every once in a while, maybe you're someone who wants to bake for your family, or you have a small family, or you just want to do it every once in a while, that is totally possible. You can keep a small amount of starter in your fridge and feed it once a week, and take care of it. So I'm gonna teach you a little bit about this, but it's really as you need it. So if you only want to use it every once in a while and bake English muffins, or just have it on hand in case you want to make a recipe, it takes a little bit of forethought, but we get into a rhythm as a family of understanding and feeding it daily, because we're kind of a big family. But if you also knew, like, hey, once a week on Sundays I want to make pancakes, or once a week I want to make this thing, then you totally can do it. So if we dive into the health benefits a tiny bit, I'm not going to go into it very deep. You can definitely do the research on your own. But what I wanted to talk about today was this really interesting article that I read about how homemade sourdough is so amazing, because you're feeding it at different times of day, and sometimes you're letting it go longer and shorter and with different wheats, and you've got your own microbiome. And so the study was about conventional bakeries using sourdough and home bakers using sourdough, and how house bakeries often forget to feed their sourdough sometimes, or maybe they feed too much or too little, or whatever it is. They're a little bit more inaccurate, let's say. But actually that's really cool, because then the different yeasts that are living in the sourdough that are helping to break down the wheat, and they're eating it. There's different strains that come out, stronger ones, really interesting ones. Whereas if you live in a commercial setting and you're feeding it at the same time every day with the same amount, exact precise proportions, you get kind of like the greedy yeasts who eat them all up already, and they know what they're doing. They're kind of like the lazy yeasts, I want to call them. But anyways, I just thought that was really interesting. I think that, taking a little bit of our health in our direction, maybe you don't even eat wheat, but it's really interesting. It's fun to play with. Emily right now has taken over feeding them, and so is Maverick is trying. So they're really having fun with it. They get to use the scale, they get to weigh things out, and then they get to see how it reacts and what happens. So it's been really interesting to do it with them. I definitely had the mindset that you have to do it a certain way. You have to feed it every single time at the same time, and that was a bit overwhelming for me, because I sometimes do that, but then sometimes life gets in the way and the farm gets busy or whatever, and I forget. So I will let my sourdoughs kind of sit on the counter sometimes, where they look hungry and need to be fed, and they do just fine. They bounce back, they're totally fine. Sometimes I pop them in the fridge and pull them out and use them. But this is something that I think is totally useful for every household. If you even like to bake a little bit, even if you just like to make muffins every once in a while, totally useful to have a little bit of starter in your fridge as a way to increase the digestion of the wheat, kind of break it down, and also just have a little fun with it, and increase the flavor. So I'm not going to get into baking an actual loaf of bread, but I have heard recently that some of the commercial bakeries that they call their stuff sourdough aren't actually using 100% sourdough yeasts. They're using, you know, the packages of yeast, which, you know, may not react well with one's system if you're looking for, you know, purely sourdough. So making it yourself, you have a lot of control. You understand the ingredients, you understand what went into it, and you are part of the end result as well. So today we're going to dive into feeding sourdoughs. First, we're going to take a little bit of sourdough, started sourdough, and you can call this a mother or you know, started sourdough, and I take about 25 grams, so I'm going to use a scale here, and I'm going to take about 25 grams and put it in the bottom of a clean jar. And then I'm going to add 100 grams of water and 100 grams of flour. And then I'm going to stir it really well. I'm going to scrape down the sides, and then I'm going to store it on the counter with the lid on, not very tight. I tighten it a little bit. I'm going to store it on the counter. And it's going to do a series of rises, and it's going to get bubbly and bigger. There are some recipes that call for it to be big and bubbly when you use it. The English muffin recipe is better off if you use it when it's bubbly, but you can still use it when it's not. And then there's some recipes that call for discard. Now, discard is after it goes through the bubbly stage and it gets really big, it's going to fall back down again. And you can use discard, meaning like the next time you go to feed it, if you were to go to feed it every single time, you would get more and more starter. So the idea of having too much starter is possible, and that's why they came up with discard recipes, but also they're really fabulous. So I use my flatbread recipe is a discard recipe. Also the sourdough Dutch baby is a discard recipe. It's really fantastic because we can bake it in the morning for breakfast. We can have it at any time of the day, but the sourdough Dutch baby pancake recipe is super easy, and the kids love it. We can cook some fruit on the side and put it in, or you can put the fruit right into it. So there's lots of things you can do. But what you want to know is that when you're feeding your sourdoughs, you are going to continue increasing it. So if you don't want that much, just save what you want and put it in the fridge, and then save it for when you want to feed it next. And you can also dehydrate it. So if you don't want to keep it around all the time, you can actually dehydrate it and then rehydrate it when you need it. So there's really lots of cool things you can do, and a lot of that stuff you can Google, or if you want me to, I can make a video on it, even though I've never done it, so I could experiment and then make a video for you. But feeding it is really simple. 25 grams of starter in a clean jar, 100 grams of flour, 100 grams of water. Stir it up and leave it on the counter. Now, if I was going to need it for a recipe that was expanding, I would want to feed it at least 4 hours ahead of time. So if you take it out of the fridge, feed it, and leave it on the counter, and let's say you're going to make English muffins, you make them 4 hours later. So there's something to think about. And then typically the English muffins need to ferment about 8 hours ahead of time. So if you're going to make the English muffin recipe the night before and leave it on the counter, let's say. So those are the things to think about when you're talking about it. It may seem like, oh my God, I don't have time for that. It's too much. And also it's kind of fun and exciting to play with it and to have it in your fridge and play with it, and it's not going to go bad. I have some sourdough that's in the fridge that what starts to do is starts to separate because some of the yeast start to die off, but I could revive that now. You can leave it in the back of your fridge. I've watched videos of people who have left it in the back of their fridge like 6 months later. They try to feed it, and it takes a little while. It takes like a week of feeding, you know, it steadily, but it's not going to go bad. So there's really nothing to worry about. It's not going to go bad. You're not going to harm it. You're actually going to maybe do yourself a little favor because you're going to have stronger yeasts and fun yeasts and things like that. And yeah, and I would love to hear what you think. Is this something that you would want to take on? Is this something like that you've done before? Is it something that you enjoy? And yeah, and if you want a sourdough starter a little bit, let me know. I have some pretty strong yeasts in there, so you get a nice strong batch. It would be ready to go and feed and have fun with, and we can drop it off at your house because I'm sure that you're part of our system somehow. We're in the composting, egg delivery, home delivery business. So if you're in there, then great, and if not, let us know. Maybe we can figure out a way to get it to you. So I hope this video finds you well, and if you like it, please let me know. Let me know any questions you have, and we will check back in again with some recipes around English muffins, flatbreads, and sourdough Dutch baby pancakes, and the sourdough skillet. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll take care. Bye-bye.